All right, and it seems we are live now. Beautiful, beautiful. Starting out the PowerPoint. Beautiful. So welcome everyone on this Sunday. We are on the eve of Nowruz. We're very happy. It's a joyous occasion. And we are welcoming everyone here on Zoom that's joining us and everyone on Facebook, everyone on YouTube. Thank you for taking your time on this beautiful occasion to discuss something that we find very, very close to our hearts. And that is the influence of Baha'i ideals on education. Our presenter today is Miss Teresa Henkel Langnes. She is an author and educator, and Teresa developed the global educational model Full Circle Learning. She leads the nonprofit organization by the same name, which has a trained practitioner repertoire of about 35 nations over 3 decades. She has written 50 books in multiple genres and has served in professional and volunteer capacities in the fields of education, in communications, the environment, human relations, and religion. She became a Baha'i 35 years ago. Now, regarding this Baha'i influence, the influence of Baha'i ideals on education, her nonprofit's mission for Full Circle Learning provides professional development for educators to help young people embrace their role as society's humanitarians and change agents, serving learners and learning leaders globally since 1992. The founder says, "We create change through global integrated education. If the world feels more peaceful, if everyone can eat, if communities survive climate change in the coming decades, it will be due to the vision, compassion, and global cohesion of today's generation." Full Circle Learning has offered pro bono capacity building support to practitioners in 35 countries on almost every continent. I assume the one that's missing is Antarctica, but you never know. You'll find inspiring stories from around the world by clicking on the map that they have or reading the reports found at www.fullcirclelearning.org. And that is spelled as is in American English, full, F-U-L-L, circle, C-I-R-C-L-E, learning, Learning.org. All right. Well, dear Teresa, welcome. We're so happy to have you. And with that introduction, we hope that you can carry on this beautiful presentation.
Thank you, John, for that amazing introduction. You feel like the talk is probably half over. That was beautiful. You really covered a lot there. Thank you so much. So I will try to make good use of this time. I know everybody's time is very precious, and I'll hope to go in a little more deeply than you might normally. When we think about education, we think about some very basic things. So let's see if we can talk about some things maybe people haven't always thought about when they think about Baha'i education. First of all, let's think about responsibilities in the age of literacy. All over the world, Baha'is are inspired to educate with distinction. I'm going to take a chance here and assume that most people in this Zoom room are familiar somewhat with the Baha'i faith and its history, and the idea that we believe that this is the age of literacy. And that's one of the reasons that we don't have clergy, is because most people in the world today do have some familiarity with books, with reading, with the importance of education. And for that reason, we embrace this idea that independent search for truth is important, that we evaluate truth with our own eyes, that we infuse humanistic purpose into literacy. And that if we are going to to think about this concept of an ever-advancing civilization, that it is through distinctive education in all of its contexts that we can do this, whether we're educating ourselves about the importance of religion and the way that religion progresses through the ages, or whether it's about academics and academic standards upgrading through each generation, that these things go hand in hand, that there are parallels. And so this emphasis on the expanding bounds of literacy, it began occurring especially in about 1830 with the Persian poet Tahirih, who really was more than just a poet. She was a feminist and began talking about the importance of educating women and really tried to bring the world out of the dark ages on that front. It continued then with the other central figures of the faith who started writing about mining the gems of the spirit through education, who even tutored the children of their enemies because they felt that religion and education had to go hand in hand, that if we were going to progress, there had to be some kind of a coherency between material progress, spiritual education, and progressive revelation in religion. So Baha'i education has taken many forms based on these traditions of the world's cultures and peoples, always promoting the best characteristics and addressing the greatest needs and building a nest for innovation and idealism. Baha'is around the world have seen education as a chance for a world-embracing vision, something that has an emphasis on commitment to local capacity building, devotion to cultivating new attributes in many spheres of human development. And the world has shown advances in spiritual degrees at the same rate it advances in material degrees, to the extent that education and religion go hand in hand. Without this coherence, it's hard to imagine that even religion will not become jaded. So let's think about that. How important is it that education systems educate the character along with the mind, so that they don't become stratified and we don't compartmentalize education and religion as being at war with one another instead of enhancing the efforts of one another? It's a very important thing to think about, so that idealism instills facts with a context, news and new ideas, instead of breeding doubt and division that paralyze society, that they actually enhance the goals of society. Sometimes we think of discussions about education as being about who is going to learn. When we talk about girls' education, of course, one Baha'i ideal is that, yes, we emphasize the education of women because society benefits when girls around the world are able to finally be educated equally. UN statistics support the idea that communities where girls are equally educated have improved health rates, improved economic viability. They're more robust in every way. And so that's a Baha'i principle that is coming to fruition. But this discussion is not so much about who learns or about Baha'is and Baha'i communities administering schools and school administration. This conversation today that we're going to have is more about why we learn and how we learn. What are the Baha'i ideals that influence education? We're going to look at a case in point, and that is full circle learning, as John mentioned. And he mentioned some of these things that we really don't need to cover. But there are 20 marks of a full circle learning school that we won't have time to talk about today. And so we'll talk mostly about some of the examples that show how an integrated education can be profound in its influence on the capacity of a community. And by integrated, Again, I don't mean who learns, I mean integrating all the facets of learning so that capacity and inner strengths and attributes and academic strengths and conflict resolution and service to humanity are equally integrated and assessed within a learning unit. And we'll take a look at how that can influence not only the student, but the actual broader society. And it can happen anywhere. The venue isn't so important so much as how the educators teach. Here we see both gamuts. Haitian children teaching subsistence farmers who are their parents how to do ecological farming to prevent erosion in the fields, everywhere from that on one extreme to a school in China that's been designed so that the architects are reflecting the full circle learning educational model within the actual architecture of the building. So there can be great wealth, or there can be great simplicity in the school building. It can be a school under a tree or a school with no expense spared. What's important is the influences behind the vision of the teachers and the educational community. Can a school look like this? Can the school be the nucleus for the community? In this case, the vision holder was the builder. He said, I'm going to take this big development and the school will be the nucleus, and we'll have an environmental garden on the roof of the school where the children will harvest their fava beans and their loquats. And I'm going to build a retirement center for 1,000 senior citizens and with a memory ward next door, and put a factory, low-income workers can work in a factory next door so that there won't be these commute times that separate the families, and they will be able to go visit their grandparents and their adopted grandparents next door as a service project every day and deliver food to them and build these strong family ties. And then once a week, the parents will come over, the fathers mostly, who the children miss so much, and help cook the food for these seniors. Totally revolutionized the family relationships. And oh, by the way, we'll teach the importance of diversity from the very earliest ages while teaching shapes and geometry and diversity of perspectives and the importance of seeing love for everyone. Amazing things happened at this one school because of one builder who had a vision that was common with the educators and the vision they were learning. Very interesting idea. And then you have sometimes the student who is the one carrying the vision. This girl, Bandu, was 13, and she had recently been in a classroom where her full circle learning teacher introduced the concept of acting on convictions. So she thought about that and said, you know, I'm really an engineer at heart, and my people are very hungry. They don't have enough protein in their diet, and I live in a delta. So I'm going to invent a crab trap so that we can go to the marsh land, and I see all these crabs everywhere that are almost invisible to everyone else, but I can see them out there. I'm going to teach the community how to go crabbing and introduce protein into their diet. She did that. She taught everyone to go crabbing, and the hunger diminished in her own community. 3 months later, they had flooding, which they frequently have, but with climate change, the flooding has become worse. And so everyone got dysentery. They couldn't afford to go into a bigger city to a clinic. So she visited every family, interviewed them about what they would do about their medical needs. And then she said, okay, I'm the engineer in the community, and I'm the one who knows the importance of taking your academic skills and your, what we call habits of heart. Her most recent habit of heart was acting on convictions. I'm going to invent a filtration system that every home can install She went to every family and helped them filter their water so no one got dysentery again. Amazing girl. So sometimes it comes from outside the school, sometimes from inside the school, but everyone has to have the same vision. Some examples of science with a purpose from different parts of the world. Up at the top, the teacher challenged the class to use trash to find parts they could recycle to turn into inventions. And a young boy decided to take a plastic water jug and turn it into a lamp, and taught the community to electrify their homes with these water jugs. There on the right, you have kids who are on a field trip in Southern California to a biomedical firm where they ship cures for disease around the world. And they're learning how to do that and then giving the scientists altruism awards. On the bottom, you have kids from about 10 to 15 learning trigonometry to make clinometers to do carbon counts in the forest to see how they can save their carbon sink. Completely different ways of integrating the character theme, the service, and the science as just one example of one academic subject. Of course, you would be integrating all the academic subjects within a learning unit, so they're all focused on the same service goal. Some amazing things are happening in Africa right now that bring us to tears almost every week. Up at the top in Nigeria, there's a project going on where these young people, it started at one school with the young people going out and helping the community address Lassa fever. They went to the hospital and they asked, what can we help with? What's the greatest health disparity? Well, people don't know how to prevent Lassa fever. Okay, tell us about the science of it. Help us to really learn about this disease and to see how we can help with prevention. So they went out into the community and they taught people how to clean up their rodent infestations, taught about what to do if you get Lassa fever. And it was so successful. They went to every household. Then they went to surrounding schools and they went to surrounding towns. Pretty soon they had reached 20,000 people. So the government said, okay, now we like this so much. We want you to work on diabetes, blood pressure, malaria, multiple other diseases. Now they are the health advocates for the government and they're training other schools. And they're wisdom exchange partners because we do that. We pair schools in diverse countries together who want to work on the same themes. So their health disparities team in Zambia was working on typhoid, and they talked about different procedures and processes for curing typhoid in Zambia. And pretty soon their partners said, you know what, we have the same conditions here. We probably have Lassa fever in Zambia. So now those kids are pressuring the health ministry in Zambia saying, we need to be working on this issue. And the Zambian health ministry is now working on Lassa fever research. So this is how it spreads. This is how the concept of being one human family, which is the first thing we teach kids, becomes not just a concept, but a reality through their service. And on the bottom, now we have the Cameroonian kids involved, and they decided their first matter of attention was going to be breast cancer. So you have 5-year-old boys who are knowledgeable about breast cancer, taking it to the streets and taking it to the world through YouTube videos. So this is one of our recent projects that's so inspiring. That if you read the testimonies of these children, you'd be amazed what they're able to do. Again, a local project, students decide they know more about the food charts than the mothers in the community in some parts of the neighborhood who are illiterate, whose babies are dying of malnutrition. So as the students become the teachers, to lead is to serve, to teach is also to serve. So they go to the illiterate mothers, they take these food charts that have very few words, mostly pictures. They train them in how to feed their babies. The mothers are very grateful because the children have saved the lives of these little babies. In this case, this is in Brazil, School of the Nations. When they finally got a middle school teacher who was trained in full circle learning, she was able to turn the class around by taking these science concepts and turning them into service projects. The students certain students had been, well, the principal described them as troublemakers. I won't never call them names, but that was her word. And pretty soon they were valedictorians, salutatorians, and high achievers. And she asked them, the principal asked them, what changed for you? And they said, well, at last we know the purpose of our learning. We're not just here to read the same textbook again and again. We're here to put it into practice. Similarly, these 3- and 4-year-olds in a Mexican-American community were learning about the water cycle, the same concept that their 5th grade, 6th grade siblings were, but they learned it hands-on, and then they learned some math fractions and made pies. They invited in the farmers who had been experiencing a long-term drought. They made pies for the farmers. They explained that they understand the water cycle, and they were so just so complimentary of these farmers for practicing the habit of heart, which was patience during this long drought. And they sang songs about patience and kissed and sang and honored the farmers. The farmers cried, of course, and had never been acknowledged for the patience it takes to be a farmer during a drought. Agriculture is one, quote, field trip that is common to almost every, certainly every continent, every country, and many schools. And it always has a goal that's specific to that community. Northern California, there's a lot of sustainable agriculture projects relating to climate change. In Liberia, they're doing animal husbandry and the Girls United projects to raise funds for elders and orphans. In Chad, they even do agriculture to subsidize gifts of chalk for teachers. It's really specific to the community, but the things you can learn through a school garden, through very creative agriculture projects that are hands-on, and yet they're learning biology and botany and things that are on the cutting edge, really, of what farmers are doing today. Appreciation of diversity is a habit of heart often associated with racism, special needs students, can be used in so many ways. Last summer, there was a tribal unification project that was an initiative of 2 wisdom exchange partners in the Gambia and in Zambia, where in both countries they were facing political tensions based on many tribes. In one country, there were 7 tribes. In another, there were 27 warring tribes. And the students took it to the streets. They talked to people. They did conflict resolution exercises. They held cultural festivals, and they were really successful in turning around attitudes. There have also been some really nice projects in the last year honoring alter-abled students using this habit of heart. It's been used over the years really successfully. This was an interesting project in Tanzania. The girls were not attending school because they were out collecting kindling. And at this school in Arusha, the boys decided their service project was going to be to invent some kind of a fuel source that would allow girls to enter school again. So they experimented with dung patties because everybody had a cow, and they collected straw and hay to see if they could make these patties burn. Did this science experiment. They were so proud to make it work. And they taught the whole community how to cook with dung patties. That's why their mouths are covered. This was pre-COVID, so the masks are not about that. They're about, it was really hard to breathe in the dung patties. Well, they sent the Wisdom Exchange partners this picture and said, here's what we did. Well, in America, their Wisdom Exchange partners said, how can we tell them about solar power? They don't have to wear those masks if they can use the sun. So they sent patterns for solar ovens that could be made with recycled cardboard that they might find lying around. And when they did that, oh my goodness, these kids went crazy. They found cardboard, they found foil, they made solar ovens, and believe it or not, nobody in their community had ever heard of solar power. They got the girls to come back to school. They reversed the deforestation that they'd been having. And it was a big revelation to their community. So they had triple transformation. It was a wonderful project. This was a very inspiring one. Brought us to tears. These choir students in Liberia on their own wrote a song about empathy at the very, very beginning of COVID. They said, you know, we know what Ebola is like. We saw this destroy our families and our communities. We can't imagine what all of China is feeling right now with COVID, being the first ones to experience COVID. So they wrote songs and made YouTube videos with their songs of empathy, because they said, we know we're one human family. Those children in China losing parents, they're no different than us. And they sent this song to the families, the Full Circle Learning families in China. And so the Chinese children, of course, were not going to let that go unrequited. So they sent messages about distance learning, how to do distance learning at home, and how to learn about science at home, how to get your parents involved, and of course, how to honor the heroic healthcare workers as your first service project. Conflict resolution is a spoke on the Full Circle Learning wheel. Over the years, it's been really important. It's taught in every classroom around the globe where there's a Full Circle Learning project. And sometimes it really pays off. One example is this picture in the lower half of the screen there. In 2019 in Liberia, there were students who'd been learning this all their lives, and they were about to have a third civil war when some insurgents were upset about government funds that had been stolen and didn't get to the people. And they were ready to go down to the government buildings and have a raid and start some violence. So the youth got on buses and all showed up in the neighborhood where those insurgents were gathered with their weapons. And they came carrying signs and giving speeches and stood up against these violent protesters. And by the end of the day, they had convinced them that they needed to use nonviolent negotiation. They said, we are here to teach you. We can teach you about how to use your words, how to reason with one another, how to use the conflict bridge even. And they said, we are the first generation that hasn't seen violence in our lifetime. You as children did. Think about your own children and save us from war. Well, at the end of the day, these insurgents got together and they said, what were we thinking? We all have children. We need to listen to the messages of these children. And they canceled the violence. So, you know, everyone was worried. Some of the schools prevented their children from coming because they were afraid they'd be slaughtered. But look what happens when you have children that are courageous because they know that these methods work. So it all came full circle. And this is what can happen when you have children who have had integrated education with character as the pivot point, threaded through all the academics, the arts, the peacemaking skills, the local service, and most importantly, to expand that to global service so that being a member of one human family is not just a concept. They begin the school year by introducing themselves to one another as members of one human family, and then everything expands out from there every project that they do is a widening of that human family. So they begin to sense the reality that that's the purpose of learning. There was some research done by a man who wanted to understand, when does this begin? When does the desire for human connection begin? And so he did some research with fetuses in the womb. And he took laser dots and showed them on the outside of the pregnant mother's belly. And when he placed those dots in random patterns, nothing happened. But when he placed the dots in the shape of a human face, the fetus's heartbeat quickened. To me, that's profound research. I may be overinterpreting, but to me, that says the desire to connect with a human family begins even before birth. That quickening of the heartbeat, that longing to connect, is evident in the human heartbeat even before the human enters the world. Now think about expanding on that, broadening the sense of a human family throughout life, throughout learning, in everything that we do, and taking those human potentialities and helping the child see that when you take your gifts and your skills and your sense of purpose and connect that with all of the needs there are in the world, it's exciting. It creates so many peak experiences that the motivation to learn improves, the academics improve, and more important than anything, the world improves. So let's now move to the idea of, how is that related to the Baha'i faith? How are those Baha'i influences? Well, let's look at 9 ways in which Baha'i ideals inspire some of those concepts. First of all, this quote, Baha'u'llah wrote, "All men have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. Those virtues that befit his dignity are compassion and loving kindness toward all the people and kindreds of the earth." Well, if the purpose of religion in this age is all about carrying forward an ever-advancing civilization, and we do this so differently today than we have in past ages because of global travel and instant messaging and all of those things that were never possible even 200 years ago, let alone 2,000 years ago, then imagine how religion finds its parallel in education. As we've seen, these tools, these literal vehicles, can be used to our great detriment or to our great advantage. And all of that is about knowledge, how we use our knowledge, without using it to progress the well-being of an increasingly connected humanity. We would really be out of step with the times. We promote materialism or disintegration instead of integration without lasting benefits. The new science of the times increasingly affirms the rate of interconnectedness in biology, sociology, geology, climate science. Everything says that we are connected. We know that more now than ever, more than ever. So the definition of an ever-advancing civilization is not, as some would believe, advancing in terms of manifest destiny or conquering countries. It's about increasing this awareness of our interconnectedness. It really implies the advance of progressive ideals, moral imperatives, along with literacy, numeracy, invention, and engineering. It means using those tools to secure peace, security, and the mysteries that enhance, harmonize, and synchronize life for all living beings. Otherwise, extinctions come about, either physical or spiritual. Like religion, education must carry forward an ever-advancing civilization, even when that means to simplify, to consume less, to deconstruct, to make distinctions that are sometimes counterintuitive in order to create peace and appreciation of the diversity of the world's peoples. It means to consider what kind of education helps learners not only succeed, but act for the benefit of the common global good. Number 2, the spiritual influence of seeing darkness as mere absence of light. This quote is from a book called God Passes By. And it talks about this spiritual history filled with love and happiness and vision and strength. Whatever it holds of darkest tragedy, it leaves mankind at its close, not facing a grim, inhospitable future, but marching out from the shadow on the high road of an inevitable destiny toward the open gates of the promised city of eternal peace. Wow, that's hard to contemplate today because we are looking at one moment in time. We're looking at a very dark moment in history if we only look at today. But when we look at the long arc of history, when we look at cycles of 1,000 years or 2,000 years, we realize that Baha'u'llah said that the forces of good have always existed in humanity, and that the time for bringing them to light is now. And the march toward peace will take a long time. And that's why our work in bringing them to light is so important, because we take a step forward, we take 2 steps back. We take a step forward, we take 2 steps back. And it is that coherence and synchronicity between religion and education that helps us take quicker steps forward. It's quite important. Many Baha'i educators have stepped in to rectify a social challenge, to reduce violence or conflict in a neighborhood, to offer children hope and peace, to present some contrast with existing conditions. When you step in a moment of dark tragedy and leave mankind facing something greater, marching toward a greater peace, you're part of that step, part of that process to move toward light, not to say there is no light, not to say that because it looked dark yesterday, there is no light. And that's so important. You know, some of you are probably, most of you probably are familiar with Abraham Maslow, who wrote The Psychology of Being. And he was famous for his principle of the hierarchy of needs, the idea that we need to provide first housing and shelter and basic needs to children before they can then move toward their self-actualization and their peak experiences. But something that we have found over the years, and something that he also noted, I guess, later in his life, is that sometimes it's those dark moments when young children do transcend. Then when the peak experience comes, it's often because of a dark moment, when despite their desperation, their poverty, their war, their hunger, their sacrifice or lack of comfort, they are able to reach out and do something amazing, to be together with others, to help others, to serve in the refugee camp, whatever it is. Those inspirational moments, when they step out of the shadows, become their peak experience. And in this age of cynicism, those idealistic young learners who come to school joyful to be with friends or to seek solutions rather than complaining that there are none, these are exactly the people who give us hope that there is light. And these are the children who are inspiring to us. And they are evidence of a spiritual principle, not just an educational principle. Another spiritual influence is the concept of rendering service. I call this the education prayer. I say it all the time. This prayer has, I think, inspired us to go on many, many times and to understand why we do this. This is only the middle of the prayer. It's not the whole prayer. It's a prayer by Abdu'l-Baha. Oh God, protect these children, graciously assist them to be educated and enable them to render service to the world of humanity. Oh God, these children are pearls. Cause them to be nurtured with the shell of thy loving kindness. This spirit of purpose, of rising up out of the ashes, relates not only to the themes of the Baha'i faith, but perhaps to the nature of true education. It's the reason why Abdu'l-Baha, the son of our faith's founder, said that we should acquaint children with hardship, not to promote their suffering, of course, but to promote their learning, that they might serve, that they might understand how to render service to the world of humanity. What is he protecting them from? Is he protecting them from work? Is he protecting them from the world itself? I think he's protecting them from the self, so that they will have the empathy to give themselves away. What does he ask that they be protected from? Perhaps it's overindulgence. He's asking them for opportunities to recognize the relationship of their many potentialities to the advancement of civilization, to my mind. Asking that they recognize that the well-being of their human family and the purpose of their learning in relation to this world-embracing vision is dependent on how they use their education. This is a really deep prayer, really important prayer. So surely in the Baha'i context, protection doesn't mean protection from the world, and education does not mean literacy alone. It means the intersection of love and literacy to polish the gems and talents in order to give service to humanity. Spiritual influences include a transcendent and manifest purpose. Baha'u'llah said, "O people, words must be supported by deeds, for deeds are the truest of words. Without the former, the latter can never quench the thirst of the yearning soul, nor unlock the portals of the vision before the eyes of the blind." So if the principles of the Baha'i faith include the oneness and equality of all nations and ethnicities and religions and genders, then commitment to the path and discourse includes the tenderness of our deeds and our words with all. Just as Baha'u'llah wrote that the goal of the age is to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization, his son Abdu'l-Baha emulated the attributes and the lifestyle that became a pattern language for demonstrating the coherence of the signs of that purpose and creating effective educational models around it. His life exemplified transcendent and manifest purpose in both word and deed. Imagine an educational template in which word and deed aligned as they did in the life of Abdu'l-Baha. What would that look like? Well, we were not the only ones to wonder that. researchers at Humboldt University in the 1990s contributed to the growing body of research on accessible role models for today in this new century. They decided to look at people who were altruists, who had started organizations and really done amazing things for society. And their research involved independently taking these people into a room and interviewing them about their childhood and looking for the elements in their childhood that made them altruistic leaders in society, really influencing society in many different ways, because these 1,000 people were all different in their leadership. And yet they found 3 commonalities in their childhood. Each of them, number 1, had a positive role model to learn from outside their family. Number 2, they each had people in their lives who were different ethnically or culturally, different in nationality or perspective or mindset, who they were surrounded by, who they learned from. Number 2, this is a really insignificant one to me. They had opportunities to turn hardship into problem solving. Isn't that interesting? If they were in a concentration camp, they had an opportunity to turn that into a problem-solving experience. If they were in a prison cell, if they were in a ghetto, if they were persecuted for their race or their religion or their whatever it was, if they were in a war zone, they had somebody or some chance to turn that into a way to uplift others in the same circumstance. Really important. They didn't use their hardships as a reason to judge others or as an opportunity for misdeeds or as an excuse to fail. Well, doesn't that sound a little bit like the life of Abdu'l-Baha? These people had a transcendent and manifest purpose, and they lived up to it. How would you build an educational model around that? We really took that research to heart. And what we decided is, you don't want to create hardships in the lives of students, but you betcha by golly, you can, in a learning unit, take the hardships of others in the community and make that the focal point of your service projects. You can build opportunities for students to have expectations of their words and deeds that will address the suffering of others. This picture on the right here, by the way, is a reversal of what we think in this school called the Love School in Zambia. It's the albinos who are stigmatized. And the children have shown love for this albino boy since he was 4 years old. And now they're talking about how their words and deeds can show love for albinos. On the left here, this little girl named Blessing begged to come to school and her parents wouldn't let her. And finally, she was allowed to come to school, and she comes to school intent on giving joy to others every day. The transcendent and manifest purpose in these children, no matter who you are or what you are doing, there's a way to build your actual learning unit, your expectations, your strategies as a teacher around what we know about how to exemplify through your words and deeds and your strategies, these goals, these spiritual goals. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent upon you to be as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. This is, of course, one of the earliest writings of Baha'u'llah when he was describing what the Creator wants for us all. And this is why in the first day of class, Full Circle Learning students go around the room and introduce themselves to one another by saying, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a member of the human family. Who are you? And so they establish the relationship as brothers and sisters from the first day. And then they go out and find how they can serve other brothers and sisters around the world, in other countries, in their own community, in vulnerable populations who they might serve, adopted grandparents, premature babies, anyone who needs their help. Very, very important. And you saw many examples of that in the specific ways. By the way, it's the teacher who decides. It's not somebody in another location. It's the school itself that decides who in the community can we introduce these children to that they might serve. It might be about eliminating prejudice among a certain group. It might be about serving a physical need, but there's someone who needs to feel that you are one with them in every community. And the children need the opportunity to exemplify oneness in a new way within each new learning unit. Another spiritual influence, inner and outer perfections. Strain every nerve to acquire both inner and outer perfections, for the fruit of the human tree hath ever been and will ever be perfections, both within and without. You notice that in the Full Circle Learning Wheel, we put character education at the very top. So in every learning unit, the very first thing you're introduced to in a sensory way is the habit of heart that will be the theme for that learning unit. And the teacher chooses among, we have 60 different suggestions of a habit of heart they can choose from, or they can invent their own. And that is threaded throughout the rest of the learning unit, because this is the most important thing that they will do, is to prioritize the way that that habit of heart will appear both academically and in their service. And all their potentialities must be manifest, whether it's empathy, peacemaking, advocacy, whatever it is. Now, over the course of the year, those students will be taking maybe 3 or 4 habits only, 3 or 4 learning units, maybe 1 per semester. And they will develop a deep, deep understanding, a nuanced understanding of what it means to manifest that perfection and master it. And they will be within a particular identity for that grade level. It might be the class of the humanitarians, or the class of the ambassadors, or society builders, or peacemakers, so that by the time they graduate, they'll have all these different identities, and they'll have a mastery ceremony at the end of the year to have certificates for the habits of heart they have mastered the best. They are truly trying to establish perfections. Beyond words alone, arts, crafts, and sciences uplift the world of being and are conducive to its exaltation. Knowledge is as wings to man's life and a ladder for his ascent. Its acquisition is incumbent on everyone. The knowledge of such sciences, however, should be acquired as can profit the peoples of the earth, and not those which begin with words and end with words. Most of us have, as Baha'is, heard this quote many times and wondered, how do we make sure that we can do that? Through education, we can do that. Evidence shows that students learn more effectively when they teach. So sometimes, planning these service projects means planning opportunities for the children to go out and teach what they have learned, to use their creative gifts to uplift, to advocate, to inform the community, to work, to plant, to engineer, to make inventions, to do some aspect of community transformation, maybe a sustainable development project. It might take the shape of poverty reduction for some aspect of the community, reducing food insecurity, teaching disease prevention, all of these things that we've talked about often they teach. In this picture, the students are preparing a program where they're going to teach love. They're going to teach their parents how to show greater love. It can be something as simple as that. 1,000 creative examples of transformative service have occurred over the years, and there are many more that individual educators can think of. Math charts, science data, these become valuable tools for change. Reading becomes research, writing becomes advocacy, students write letters to officials, they participate in literary journals or an environmental or unity-based theme, they write poetry and problem-solving letters to global partners. They even write books, loving letters to adopted grandparents. They hold storytelling festivals for peace or marches for diabetes prevention. They bring chieftains together as they arrange cultural festivals to promote intertribal unity. The list goes on and on of what you can do to make sure that the learning doesn't begin and end with words. The life lessons promote love. Abdu'l-Baha said, let us have love and more love, a love that melts all opposition, a love that conquers all foes, a love that sweeps away barriers, that abounds in charity, a large-hearted tolerance and forgiveness, a noble striving, a love that triumphs over all obstacles. So by the end of a learning unit, the learners evaluate their work in terms of how it affected their broader human family. This evaluation itself teaches a spiritual practice. The mastery of transformation is the goal and the attainment of everyone in the class. And the variations from one unit to the next or from one school to the next are all about really the context of their love. The teachers share a global vision and they learn universal strategies, but they tailor these to their national education standards, their local community needs, and to their specific class. Their community of Africans, Asians, Islanders, Americans, Middle Easterners, or whatever region that they come from. Becoming one with the human family suddenly is not an abstract concept for them. They see through both a local and global lens and link their mastery goals, their cognitive growth, and the extent of their love. They're not just vying for high marks, but for high endeavors. As Abdu'l-Baha said, they love all the world, they love humanity and try to serve it. They work for universal peace and universal brotherhood. And this is the social cohesion that we're looking for. A deep dive into the spiritual concepts that influence Baha'i thought can enrich education and bring it up to date for learners from all heritages and belief systems, while their hearts are still open to the exploration of the unfolding relationships within the universe. As we share these opportunities with students of all faiths and no faith, we sense the charge to look into the eyes of every child and to demonstrate the reality of Abdu'l-Baha, that he lives so well, to love all the world, to love humanity, and to love our children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was very rich, very full of example. A lot of examples you could pull from your experience listed as you've gone through these points and why they're important to be implemented. So are there, as a question, are there items that you feel need to be implemented next? What is the most pressing issue that would need to be implemented next in this program you feel going forward?
You know, one thing that has manifested itself is the importance of a shared vision. And it's not so much a matter of next, it's so much a matter of teachers everywhere questioning themselves about their collective vision. Sometimes what causes a community to feel that now is the time is an incident that happens in their own community, a sense of disconnect with what's happening in their part of the world or their part of town, or with COVID, or with education itself, with the war, with conflict resolution, with attitudes toward race. Anything could be the instigator, where a group of teachers or a group of parents says, I want to get back to the spiritual values I believe in. I'm going to get some people together. We are going to train ourselves, educate ourselves in the strategies that will turn this ship around. And we are going to form a collective and own our collective vision and help our children, help this next generation self-correct. A lot of times that is what causes a request to come forward, and people come to us and say, will you help us? And we help them. We never say no, we say, how can we do this together? And that's what we're here for, is to help those who have begun to realize that they want to work together as a team with a collective vision to help their community better address the needs of the next generation, to have a vision that reflects what humanity needs.
These are very deep points. And I have to tell you, some of it today, it's actually gone over my head. Not to say that other presentations don't. I mean, like the richness of this, I think that anyone watching this, including myself, should go back and look at these very, very important quotes that you went through as well in this presentation. I saw your inspiration in how you're presenting this, and more importantly, referencing these beautiful quotes. How long did it take you to go through these writings of Baha'u'llah and formulate this plan of yours to serve in the way that your organization is currently performing now?
You know, life is very interesting. A need arises. In this case, the need was civil unrest in Los Angeles in 1992. And you rise to the call. You go to where that need is. Children were traumatized by civil unrest. We didn't want them to be victims. We wanted them to be change agents. And we went and we began to feel that need. And the answers were provided for us because we answered that call. And it was a step-by-step process where we said, what philosophy statement is needed here? And within a few months, we had a philosophy statement. We looked at it and we said, oh, this is basically a one-page version of the Baha'i teachings. And as time went forward and we needed to apply for grants to help that program become sustainable, we began to put in information in those grants, and we would look at it later and say, oh, this is actually Baha'i inspired. It had to go to sources that were not Baha'i sources to become fundable over time, had to become a 501(c) nonprofit organization. But the Baha'is who were involved recognized the influence in their own lives, as this could not have happened if we weren't Baha'is, if we ourselves weren't inspired by the Baha'i writings and the Baha'i influences. And so with that as the masthead, the ship moved forward. And each time we would say, oh, well, we have this group of people coming to us. Some were Baha'is, some were not. Many were not. The children we serve are not, in most cases. I would say of the 400,000 people were serving at any given time, maybe 3% are Baha'i children. Most are not. But in the beginning, a few people would come because they heard about us word of mouth through the Baha'i faith. Many just heard about it, what we were doing, and asked. But the ship moved forward because we were praying. We were going to Abdul Baha and saying, what? You want us to do what? And he would literally appear, would be on pilgrimage, and he would come and show his face in the shrines and say, not time to quit yet. There's a little girl, and here's what she looks like. And you'll know her community when they ask you for help. We were being guided all along. And so it's only in retrospect that we are able to look at this program, and every time we read a writing and say, well, of course, this fits into what we're doing right now. And of course, the board is about 1/3 Baha'i, and we all have our own personal devotionals. When we are reading a Baha'i writing that inspires us, and we recognize that it inspires a new strategy, we incorporate that strategy. I've been a Baha'i for 35 years. The program is 30 years old. I was a fairly new Baha'i, but had read probably, like 30 Baha'i books before I became a Baha'i, in the 3 months before I became a Baha'i, and had dreams of Abdul Baha in those 3 months. So I was already being guided to be ready when those children became victims of trauma. And so I know that this program is really Abdul Baha's doing, not mine. That's all.
I love the humility with which you've been going forward, this humble posture of learning. I had in my mind a question about prayer, and here you went. You went speaking about it. So the question about prayer was already answered. But I did also have a question, as this is posted on Zoom and people are sending questions. We have a follow-up to that, where this person is asked, Sandra is asking, she says, I love the humble posture of learning. How can we do this together? And then she says, thank you. Mm-hmm. So I believe that it was, in a sense, rhetorical in the context of the humble posture of learning, yet there is, I feel, a component to it for all of us that are attending here today, and those of us who are watching after this video has been posted, who knows, a month from now, a year from now, who knows when. What is in this context of this talk, having now gone through the talk and then we're here at this point, we're wondering, what do we do now?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. So there's I could take that question either rhetorically or literally. I'm not sure which way she meant it. Rhetorically, I think it is so important for people in a community who are either educators or parents, or even anybody, to have conversations about the next generation of youth and how and whether they are prepared to inherit the problems of the age. How are they moving ahead? What are we offering them to take us forward in this ever-advancing civilization? Do they understand history and what their role is and what their goals are for the age in the context of their own time? That's one thing. But literally, education, being apart from Baha'i education, what about how they're using their potentialities in the world for their careers, for their education? There are times when educators really will want to take the bull by the horns. That's probably a bad analogy because we're not bullfighting, But there may be communities where you say, let's get trained. Let's see if this vision is right for us. If we want to start our own school. I know some people in different parts of the country who are really wrestling, trying to find the right school for their children. Baha'is who are really wrestling with this right now. Maybe the educators in that community want to start a school, an independent school, if not a charter school, a private school, an independent learning school, something else. And they want to say, let's talk to me and see if we want to take the online course. We have a new online course now. And I can give you the information about it. You could take it for free as a group, or I can lead you in some directions. And it will help you at least get started on a collective vision. And you can say, okay, we've learned these strategies. And now we can sit down with it and say, do we want to do this or something similar? Do we want to expand it? Do we want to do something slightly different? And have a collective vision for the learners in our community that better prepares them for the future. We have too few options, I think, in America for Baha'i-inspired education of a formal nature. Or do we want to get on board with international service opportunities? Do we want to go and serve in projects that maybe help learners prepare to be ready to go and do international service projects? My feeling is, until we've helped youth understand how to serve our own communities, they're not prepared to get on a plane and become volunteers internationally. Some youth have lost the habit of integrating their skill sets into local volunteerism in meaningful ways. So, what are those conversations we can have where we're integrating character, service, skills, academic skills, artistic skills into things that truly, truly advance civilization and help humanity? So whether it ends up being an after school or weekend project, or whether it ends up being a full-scale school, those are conversations that are better had maybe after the educators participate in a training program. So those are some suggestions, and it doesn't need to interfere with your study circles and your junior youth programs. It can enhance what you're doing in that category, in my mind. I don't know if that answers her question or not.
This hopefully has, and she is very free to message here in the Zoom chat, and I'll know just in case, but it seems that it was covered. At least I think so. Now, if there's another follow-up, we'll have it here.
And you can give her my email address, my Gmail.
Oh. Okay, splendid. Jeremiah, if you could please send her that. Actually, she just answered. She says, yes, thank you. Are there more ideas about the integration of the arts that you can give? And then after that question, we have a question from Dana. So Sandra's question again is, are there more ideas?
The arts are one spoke in the wheel. Obviously, we integrate it with the whole wheel. But when you're talking about the arts on their own, we teach youth the arts are not, God did not give us talents in the arts for the sake of competition. The arts are a tool for uplifting, inspiring, and advocacy, all of which are, and informing, all of which are service. That's all about service to humanity. And so we use them in a lot of different ways, whether it's vocal music, whether it's dance, whether it's visual arts. There are lots of ways to use it, the arts, but we don't use them in ways that a lot of other groups do. And so if she wants to email me for some ideas and I can learn more about what she's already doing in the arts, we can brainstorm back and forth about that. or a more question, if for clarification, she can ask me a more specific question about that. So many things that have been done in the arts. That's a multi-choice question. It's not something that can be answered in one sentence. But I hope that helps to think about the arts as being really purposeful, to use to uplift, to inform, to teach a concept, to really serve. Whether you're singing, whether you're having your kids go out and sing in a nursing home, whether they are sending an inspiring message to the community, whether they're advocating for a cause, think of it as mostly group arts, because it's not about competition. It's not about seeing who's the best dancer. We try to get away from prizes, and rejection and tryouts and all that.
Or giving everyone a trophy, hopefully.
Exactly.
Participation trophies for everyone. I'm kidding.
Well, everyone gets a Habit of Heart award, but you know what we do at the mastery ceremony at the end of the year? Instead of giving the trophies for the best singer and the best athlete and things like that, the teacher gives a certificate to each student for the habit of heart that student best mastered. They may have shown that habit of heart through their singing or their creativity or their patience or whatever it is. The habit of heart has the word of, or the certificate has not a graduation certificate, but the habit of heart they best mastered. And then the student brings out the certificate that they give to their parents for the habit of heart they appreciate in their parents. And those parents, they may have just gotten out of prison. You don't know who the parent is, but the parents are now on guard. They're realizing, what? My child sees something good in me. I've got to be really on guard for the rest of the year now, because my child is actually watching me and appreciating me. And there are a lot of tears that come out when suddenly everybody knows that the equilibrium has been reset. And it's about how you use your education to uplift, whether it's the arts or whatever it is, the academics are being used to uplift the whole society. That's what I want to say about awards.
Well, that is deep. I'm very happy we did cover the subject, because that's not something people generally expect when you think about bringing home something that really also educates the parents, who are the prime educators of these children anyway. That's amazing. And that being said, I do want to get to Dana C's question, and I think that will be the last for this afternoon, as we close out this very, very strong and beautiful presentation. The question is, you are doing much needed and excellent service that is so invaluable. The concept of learning, then, teaching others in the community is unique.
Thank you.
Do you have a standard curriculum or book series using the full circle model you outlined?
Thank you so much, Dana. That is a really important question. On our website, we have many books. However, what we do is we offer free training before turning people to the books, because we want every community to customize and to understand the principles and strategies that go into the thought processes for their community of learners and teachers, and then just to use the books as a fallback position, as a springboard for ideas. The most important thing is that they know how to design and customize and adapt their curriculum to their community. So we don't just send people to the books. We start with the training and then show them where the books are online. Does that make sense? Even though the training is free.
I think so. And for elaboration, we have your email we just posted. And actually, I'm scrolling back up to it. I'm sure Maya posted. Okay, there we are. It's T. Langness @gmail.com. So T for Teresa, and then Langness @gmail.com. LANGNESS. So with that being said, we have asked our last question for this afternoon. We want to, as a community here in Clearwater, Florida, thank you, Teresa, and your organization for sharing this beautiful content, and also you personally as a Baha'i who has been affected by the writings, who's tried to put the teachings into action in your life, and with humility are taking every step that you take forward. That being said, I do want to, before I actually close, say to everyone, it is Nowruz, pretty much, almost. Here in America, we are going to be celebrating Nowruz come sunset. In other parts of the world, they're already celebrating it because sunset has already happened. But we just wanted to say, as a matter of celebration, happy Nowruz to everyone in this joyous holiday season, this new rebirth, this beginning of a new year. So thank you, everyone, for sharing this very special day with us. And again, Teresa, as well, in your time over in California, we thank you for spending this time with us. And we would, if you want to take a plane, you still have time. At 7:30, we'll be having a dinner at the Bahai Center in Clearwater. You're welcome to come in and have dinner with us. So it will be at the Bahai Center of Clearwater for all of us who are joining today, if you'd like to come to the Nowruz celebration. That being said, Miss Teresa, would you like to have any closing thoughts before we end for this afternoon?
Well, I wish everyone a happy Nowruz. Make sure you eat lots of good Persian food for me. And I just wish you all lots of luck and joy as you pursue this very important path, advancing civilization in Clearwater.
Yes, and it's one step at a time, and more, as you pointed it out, one humble step at a time.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Have a beautiful Sunday, everyone.